Now 250,000. Now, but to get 275. High, but to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 1/4, 325. High, but to get 3 1/4, but to get 325. Now half. Now, but to get 300. And hello again from Dallas, Texas, at Lincoln Center. We are at the center of the universe. That would be at the North Dallas Tollway and the LBJ Freeway, just about 10 minutes from downtown Dallas. And welcome to the Mike McGavel Jones Show. We've got a great show today. We've got some friends that we work with and we've known for a good while now. And so at this time, I'd like to introduce our guest. We've got Carroll Bobo, and Carroll is the owner and broker of United Country, Bobo, Realty, and Land Company.
Yes, sir.
You didn't think I'd get that right,
I
did
didn't
you?
know. I wasn't sure.
And Ben Jackson, who's an agent in that office, and he's a young man that's gotten his feet pretty wet in this real estate business, and we're going to talk to both of them today about their experiences in the land business and the recreational land business and the farm and ranch land business, and being in the franchise business with us at United Country, the United Country brands, and so you guys picked a really ugly day to be in Dallas.
It was ugly coming up here.
Yeah.
We did pretty good till LBJ and
got here pretty quick.
Yeah, then we came around. Yeah, we
now,
did.
Did you come in from Tyler?
Yes.
Did you? Okay. Well, I know that you've been at the Dallas Safari Club conference. That's our annual convention that we have here.
Yes, sir.
And I was there last year. I did stop by Saturday for a while, and you could literally stay there the whole time.
Oh, if my feet could have, if my feet could have stood it, we'd still be there.
Yeah.
But it's massive, and we try to go every year.
Mm-hmm.
This time, I have never. We commented with the fellas that was with me, and I have never seen so many gun dealers. And
what day did that thing start?
Started on Thursday last week and ended Sunday.
Yeah.
And it was just hundreds of thousands of people came through there, and just so my whole comment was, the hunting and recreational land, but it is alive and well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is alive.
Well, when I pulled into the parking lot next to the Omni on Saturday afternoon, I could barely get in.
Yeah.
And if anybody ever wants to see an expensive truck, there's enough trucks, pickups and trucks, and they park down around where the Reunion Arena used to be, and that's now a big parking lot. And they'll bring you back in. They've got a cart to drive you back on. But if you want to see guns, if you're into guns, or if you're into hunting, anything related to hunting and traveling, and going abroad, it is really the place to be. And for United Country offices like yours, which we're going to talk about some more, it's where a lot of our customers are.
Oh,
got a lot of customers. We have a lot of buyers, but we also have a lot of sellers. Yeah. I was there last year, and we had a listing up in Minnesota on an elk ranch, and they had a huge presence. They had a big, expensive booth. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that was also during our sales cycle. We're trying to sell their ranch, but they're also promoting their hunts. And, when you're in that business, you can't stop. You got animals coming in, and you got to keep moving them out. And we have since sold that property, and that has been
that's the good news.
Yeah, that's the good news.
That's the good news.
But I highly recommend anybody that's really interested in hunting and fishing and man, I tell you what, the gun boost or something else.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, a friend of mine was looking at a vintage Winchester 41 pump gun, and it had been engraved and had nice wood on it. And of course, we've known about Model 41s forever because I was an old skeet shooter and all. $19,900.
Just $19,000.
Just $19,000 for probably who knows when it was
just
built.
The price of a used truck.
Yeah, it was amazing. I'm thinking, let's pick it up, Morris. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's take it with us.
Well, if you want to see some customized, rigged out trucks, they've got those.
Yeah. Jeeps. The Jeeps are incredible.
The ATVs and all that stuff. So right now I want to just go backwards. Okay. We're going to talk to you first. Of course, I was figuring out this morning about how long I've known you, and I think we've known each other now for about 13, 14 years, because I came on board United Country Real Estate when we started the auction division around December of 2006.
That's about right.
That's about right. And I think my first convention was Jacksonville, which was when I've been 07.
Yeah.
And so let's go back. Where were you born?
Tyler, Texas.
So you're born and raised.
Born and raised in East Texas. Born and raised in Tyler. Went to high school in Tyler. Went to Tyler Junior College. Got married in Tyler. Tyler girl. Met her. Interesting thing. People say, "How'd y'all meet?" I said, "Well, it was a long time ago at the East Texas." Then they called it the East Texas Fair. Now it's called the East Texas State Fair, which I don't know why, but that's what they call it. And we were at a Jerry Lee Lewis concert.
Sweet.
A friend of mine, we were sitting in the back of the room, and my wife and friends of hers, were sitting in the front. And it was Jerry Lee Lewis, a Big Bopper, Richie Valens. I mean, they put on the show at the Mayfair building there.
Now, what year was this?
That was I was in the 9th grade. So that was 1950 something, and she was in the 7th grade, and that's where we met the first time. And then we had a bunch of rides. A friend of mine we had the tickets to ride everything all night till they closed the fairgrounds down. So she was with me, and my friend was with her friend, and we rode every ride out there 100 times, and never saw her again. She came back from college in her second semester, and
she was hiding from you.
She was hiding. She was.
Yep.
So we hooked up, got married, started dating. 6 months later, we got married, and we're still married.
The rest is
54 years later.
Well, you need to do a shout out to Ms. Molly today.
Yeah, she's out there.
Yeah.
Hey, Molly.
She's probably listening right now.
I think so.
Because we are live.
Yeah, I told her we'd be live.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got married, and then, I was in the electronic business. I was in a partnership in Tyler, electronic business, and basically wanted to get out of it, and so I got hooked up with a manufacturer's rep and came over to Dallas. And we sold our house in Tyler, got an apartment in Dallas, moved over here, went to work we got over here on the weekend, went to work on Monday, walked in the door, and said, "I'm here, ready to go to work." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I've already hired somebody." I said, "Wait a minute, I sold my house, my wife's pregnant, I moved to Dallas, and I don't have a job." He said, "No, you got 2 of you, whichever one works out the best, that's who I'll keep." So I said, "Well, okay, let's get after it." So anyway, I wound up winning the deal on that. And
now, what kind of?
It was wholesale electronics.
Okay, what kind of electronics?
It was everything from resistors to capacitors to diodes to vacuum tubes to everything that you can imagine
that went to old radios and TVs.
Exactly, and the customers over here was Texas Instruments and Vero and all these different big manufacturers over here, OEM stuff. Of course, now everything we were selling then, it is a junk pile somewhere.
Oh, I know.
It just all changed. But that's what I got here. And then I've been shooting competitive skeet. Started shooting skeet, and
when did you start that?
I started practicing or learning how probably 1960. I don't know, probably 62, 63. We've been racing go-karts and quit racing go-karts and started shooting a shotgun and started shooting trap. And then they built the Tyler Gun Club. And we started shooting skeet, I guess probably 63 or so, and started competing in 1968. It was the first time I competed, and the reason I started shooting, I could go duck hunting, and I couldn't hit anything, so that's why I've got to learn how to shoot a shotgun, so that's what we did. And I don't know, I just got hooked on it, and I got good at it. And we competed, locally mostly. Back then, I used to say, we'd go to a skeet shoot and the party would break out, or go to a party and then a skeet shoot would break out. I mean, that's kind of the way it was back in the day. And then it just kept evolving, and we wound up moving over here and back and forth. Anyway, I got involved in shooting and just kept shooting and kept shooting. And then one day I was out shooting at the old TI Gun Club, which is no longer there. Texas Instruments had a gun club for all of their employees and their friends and family, and it was a nice facility. Went out to a shoot out there, met a guy who you may probably know, Martin F. Wood. We call him Bobo Wood on Collector's Covey here in Dallas, and he was a really great shooter. He'd going to law school at SMU, and anyway, met with him, and one thing led to another, and just kept competing and won some stuff. And in 1976, I guess. See, I got in I guess it was 1976. I was working in Dallas at the electronics, and the fellow a guy by the name of Jim Lear had been appointed executive director of the National Skeet Shooting Association. And we was competing one day, and I beat his brains out in the shoot-off, and he got to talking to me, and he said, hey, I'm looking for somebody to manage the office over here. He said, we got a lot, we're trying to revamp this whole thing, and would you be interested in talking to me, about coming on board and managing the office and taking care of all the membership and all the registered shooting and getting it all set up and getting it all reported and done all this kind of. I said, sure. So I went and talked to him and took the job. So I was shooting and working and shooting and got involved with the skeet shooting. So about doing that, started meeting people from everywhere. And then we were in charge of running the World Championship skeet shoots.
Wow. And
back then they moved it around. And that first year I was there, I think it was 1970 when I went to work. I think it was 1970 I went to work for National Skeet. And that year the tournament was in Savannah, Georgia. And I just came on board, so I didn't go. I stayed back. And then from then on, from 1971 till I left there, in 19, whenever it was, anyway, we did go and run the World Championships. Molly went with us, and she was in charge of the squatting. And, we had 1,000 shooters, and we went to Savannah, Georgia, Rochester, New York. It had been held in Vegas before, Kansas City, all around, but they settled finally in San Antonio. And we eventually, there's a group of guys in San Antonio built a gun club down there that was, specialized in clay targets and live birds, which they don't talk about much anymore. But and they wanted to have the state championship down there, so Texas pulled a deal together. I was a member of the Texas Association of Skeet Shooter Association and ran the state shoots for them. Anyway, we bought Texas, what was then called the Texas International Gun Club, in 1973. It's about 400 acres of land. I think they had 12 skeet fields. They had even held the Pan American Games down there one year, way back before we bought it. It had the bunker traps. It had everything. So we bought it. And in 1970, well, actually what we did, we bought the 400 acres or 200 acres north of the gun club. It was contiguous, and put in 20 skeet fields. So that gave us 32 skeet fields.
Wow. To
hold the national championship. So that's when we started having it down there. Well, since we're having a national championship every year there, they decided to move the headquarters down there. So in 1973, we moved down there. Actually, what happened, a year after we bought the 200 acres and put in the 20 skeet fields, we had the first right of refusal to buy the rest of the club, which is a beautiful place, gorgeous place, sitting in the hill country, sitting out west of San Antonio, near Lake Medina. And they called, said, hey guys, y'all got first right of refusal, here's what we want for it. Are y'all in? And we'll own and finance it. So National Skeet Shooting Association bought, back then, they bought that property, that the rest of the 200 acres. I think paid $360,000 for it. I mean, it's insane now.
I know what the land's bringing
anyway, now they got close to 600, 800 acres now, and they still hold, there'll be over 2,000 shooters down there at the sporting clay event. But so anyway, we bought that, and so they said, well, let's just move the headquarters down here. So we were over on Lumen Avenue, and we shut down the headquarters, and we moved to San Antonio and rehired staff. We took 3 people with us, and we rehired staff, and we started, had our office down there and shooting down there and everything. So we wound up, I wound up being executive director of the National Skeet Shooting Association. A fellow that hired me, that took me down there, wound up getting sick, and one thing led to another, anything. So I was executive director for, I don't know, about 3 years or so, and it's when you're involved with the political of a nonprofit, it's ugly.
I know a little bit about those.
It's a little bit ugly. So, but anyway, we stayed down there, and then later on, Molly and I decided to move back to East Texas. So we came back to East Texas, and I went to work for a family friend of ours that owned Garden Valley Resort outside of Tyler's Golf Resort, and they wanted to put in skeet fields and trap fields, and they had fishing lakes. They wanted to develop the whole place and all this kind of stuff. So we moved back up here, and I stayed with them for, 16 months or so, and it just turned out not to be my deal. And so we wound up, bought a little business called Auto Sounds, etc. Started it. We were doing, back then, you're doing car stereos, CB rays, all that stuff. We did that for about a year, and I don't know, one day a good friend of mine I grew up with that caused me to start shooting skeet in the first place because I couldn't hit a dove, so he let's go to the gun club. So he owned a Century 21 franchise in Tyler. So he said, hey, man, why don't you come on board with us, and so I started in the office, residential sales.
What year was this?
That was I went full time September the 1st. I remember that because dove season. September the 1st, 1982, and went dove hunting first, and then I started. So I was in '82, and it was in the residential real estate business. And after a few months, finally figured out, hey, wait a minute here, you need to be getting more listings. Quit worrying about these buyers. You need to get listings. So we kind of went along. I got pretty good at it, and my wife worked for a survey company, and I worked for a real estate company. And I don't know, about 1980, I think it was 88 or so, I got recruited by the Century 21 regional office. I knew the guy had sold my first house I sold. He was an agent in Lindale, Texas, and I've sold a property he had listed and got to know him. And a very gregarious guy. I mean, he was a pretty cool guy. And he said, you could really do good in our franchise marketing. What's interesting? Would you be interested? I said, sure, I'll talk. Anything. So I came to Dallas and interviewed. They were changing over the region. Texas was split into two regions back then. The South region, North region, Century 21 North, Century 21 South. They merged the two together, brought in a new director, and they brought in a new marketing director of franchise marketing. So he came out of the Houston office, and I went to work with him up here. So I ended up getting the job, and I stayed in East Texas. Now I worked East Texas, North Louisiana, Southern Arkansas. So for almost 10 years, I traveled, probably 7 years, I traveled the circuit pretty good, bringing in new offices, converting offices. 1982 was ugly, 17% interest, FHA, VA.
I remember.
A lot of folks out there needed help, and we kind of figured out a way to help them get into the franchise business. And so during that time, did a lot of franchises across the country, small towns, big towns. And so anyway, things was moving along, and the Century 21 decided. Well, actually, before that, they came to me and said, "Hey, you've been doing this long enough." They moved me over. They moved me from Tyler. They moved me over to Dallas, to the regional office in Dallas. They said, "We want you to get, we want you to, get in this corporate world." And I thought, okay, whatever. So I came over and get a phone call from a friend of mine, Dwayne Moore, back in California, because the headquarters of Century 21 back then was in Irvine, California. He called me and said, "Bobo, I need your help." I said, "What do you need, Dwayne?" He said, "I need you to go to Minnesota."
Ooh,
I said, "What? You want me to do what?" He said, "Is Minnesota, Texas?" He said, "There's not a Minnesota, Texas. There's Minnesota.
There's Minnesota.
So he said, "We got a regional director up there is about to lose his job because they have sold like one franchise in 14 months, and we're in the franchise marketing business." So I went up. He said, "They think they're going to interview you, but no, you need to go interview them and find out what in the world has gone haywire up there." So I went up and met with them, and they were really, I could see what we needed to do, and nice people. I mean, I was really surprised. Great people in Minnesota, and so they flew Molly back up there. We went back up and took a look, and we decided to take the job and found us a triplex over in Eden Prairie, and
wow,
and the office was in Edina, Minnesota. And,
oh my!
It was high end right there where that was, and so anyway, we moved in August. And I thought, end of July 1st, I said, "Man, this is wonderful weather.
Oh yeah,
it's
great
weather up here. It's a beautiful lake, and everybody's sailing." Guy said, "Well, there'll be a nice fishing guy right there." I thought, "Oh, okay." So anyway, we went up there and we moved, and I didn't know how long we were going to be there, and so I assembled the troops and got them all in, the same group of guys that had been there, and gals, and brought them together and said, "Here's what we're going to do, and how we're going to do it, and what do y'all think?" And I brought the whole team in, all the management team that were calling on the offices, and pulled them all together and made a team deal out of it, and I was the only one talking Texan, and they were paying real close attention because they could figure out what I was saying. And at the end of the day, we pulled that thing together and wound up selling, I think it was 17 franchises in 4 months.
Wow.
And they'd sold one in 14 months. So it turned out, I guess for that reason, from my old boss called me and he said, Bobo, I need you and Molly to move back to Texas. I said, oh, okay, what are we going to do? He said, we're reorganizing the entire Century 21 operation. And I want you to come back and be the divisional vice president of franchise marketing. And we got all these regional directors are going to need help recruiting and training their staff, and I want y'all to move back to Texas to do it. So we moved back, I think it was January of 1993. I think it was, 1993. We moved back because we moved to Minnesota in 92. So 93. We moved back.
Of course, and that's right when we were having a little bit of a recession then, too.
Yeah, it was.
We were closing the savings and loans. I was working for the FDIC.
That was 86 when all that was going on. That was insane.
And RTC and all that stuff.
It was nuts.
Yep.
So we moved back, and I guess I was fortunate to be involved in that environment because a lot of people in real estate, a lot of my friends just didn't make it in real estate. It was tough times. And anyway, we got into franchise sales, and during that franchise sales group, and when I became the marketing director for the division, I traveled all over the United States. I traveled from, I didn't have all of Nevada, but I had Las Vegas. Now, I don't know how they worked that out. In Arizona, in New Mexico, and Texas, and I had Oklahoma. I had a whole bunch of stuff all the way to Mississippi, or Alabama, I guess. And so I had a bunch of guys, I had 13 people working for me. We were selling franchises all over the place. And then in 1995, along came Cendant, which was back then called something else, and they bought out Century 21. They wanted to be in the franchise. They were in the hotel franchise business. They wanted to be in the real estate. So in 95, they bought it out, and I stayed on as the marketing director for basically the same division, pretty much. It was changed up a little bit, but and in 1998, it got real stupid corporate-wise. So, we bailed out. Our stock options were available, and we were gone. So we stayed around Dallas for about a year, and during my franchise sales days, we ran into the United Country guys. Back when we first ran into them, it was United National agency, and it was kind of hard to decide, are they real estate or are they insurance?
Well, you had United Farm. And that's what
that was originally.
That's what I knew.
Yeah, right.
When I was growing up in the '60s, we had a United Farm agency, and then they did.
Well, this United National, that insurance guys bought them out, and we're going to do it all merging together. Which Century 21 tried that with years ago, and it didn't work out, and they wound up selling. Trying to think of the insurance company now. They'll come to in a minute, but they sold out to the guys that have it now. So anyway, we were. Decided to get out of the deal, and I stayed around Dallas for a while. And worked with a friend of mine out of Arkansas. They were in the timeshare business, and we had franchised some of their sales outlets to try to legitimize, the sales and stuff. And anyway, long story short, wound up working for another group that he got involved with, and we were a big hitter in NASCAR, and went to Daytona 500 in 2000. And we were down in the pits and down in inspection. It was a ball. We got to set up in the big booth with
you were important.
Bill Franks. We were important. Yeah, we were important. Yeah, and then that fell apart. And didn't have anything to do with that. The whole deal fell apart. Anyway, the good news is I didn't move again. We stayed in East Texas, and so we opened. I had learned about the United Group during the franchise marketing, because you learn about everybody that's in the franchise business, because you got the competition you got to deal with. So I mean, I was there when Remax started. We were in the franchise sales business when Remax showed up, and everybody said, "What in the world is this thing?" And they were interrupter. They came in and just totally interrupted the whole process. And I'd been in residential early on in my life. But anyway, I was sitting around there one day, and I was stuck on LBJ right out here, and it was hot, and I was on LBJ, and I called Molly on the phone. I said, "I am out of here." She said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "You choose, Hill Country of Texas or East Texas. Doesn't matter. I'm ready." So we wound up moving back to East Texas. In the meantime, one day I was riding down Interstate 20 going over to a tile. I think I was going over to see my dad or something, and there was a sign on Interstate 20 that said United Country Real Estate, and I thought, country, what is that? Anyway, so I wrote it down, and I got back to the home in Dallas, and I Googled it up what it was, and the sign I saw was for an office in Canton, Texas, just down the road from where we are now, between Tyler and Dallas. And So I'd Google them up and send an email to the headquarters. I knew that I didn't want to get back in the residential real estate business. Yep. I knew that.
Yep.
And so this United guys, I knew they were doing, farms and ranches and land, and that's what I wanted to do. And so
you had a magazine.
Yeah, I had the magazine. Yeah, oh yeah. And so I sent this email, and when I did, within the next 10 days, I must have got 300 pieces of mail. It seems like probably wasn't that much, but it seemed like it. And back then, what they would do when they got a lead, they sent it to all the offices. Mm-hmm. No matter where they were, they just sent these labels out.
Yep.
And so anyway, end of the day, I started getting inundated with these leads coming in. I'm thinking, well, this is interesting. These guys are thinking, I'm going to buy something. So I called headquarters and got a hold of Don Sprague.
Yep.
Was in charge of putting all their franchise group together, and I got to talking to him on the phone. He said, "Can you fly to Kansas City?" I said, "Sure." What he said, we'd like to talk to you a little bit. What's your, he'd already talked to me about my background. So I flew to Kansas City and I met with Don and Carl Hopkins and Lou Francis. I'm sorry, Lou, if you're watching. And met with those guys all day. Went to lunch, and they picked my brain about franchise sales, and I picked their brain about United Country, and one thing led to another, and I wound up in the franchise business with those guys, and we started our United Country office in January. Went to a training meeting up in there in December '98. In December 1, 1999, we opened the office in Lindale, Texas, north of Tyler. My wife and I, no listings, no agents, no buyers, no nothing.
No hits, no runs.
No nothing. We just said, blind faith, let's go.
Yep.
And so we're now in our 21st year. So we've seen a lot happen in the United Country,
Yep.
side of the fence
Yep.
this year. This has been a good, working with Lou and those guys was a good relationship. And then we got involved way back. I think back when we were doing this Realty thing now, I think back before Dan and those guys got involved, we got involved with a guy named Jim Jones who was working with Hunting Across America back then. And they were on the Outdoor Channel and what have you. So I came over to Texas Association of Realtor Convention, and they were here set up. What they were doing is they were trying to put together a website for hunting properties through Hunting Across America. And Denman that owns Mojo Outdoors was one of their big, Mojo, all the Mojo does, Mojo Ducks, and he was a big investor in advertiser in Hunting Across America. And anyway, I got to know all those guys. And so Jim, why don't you go to Argentina dove hunting with us? Why don't you, load up and let's go. So I got a hold of Don Sprague and the guy. So a couple of the guys from United went. So we went down and went on a big dove shoot in Argentina. That was back in 2005 or so, or something like that, before Dan Duffy and the guys came along.
That's right before I joined.
So right after, we went down there a couple of years, and so we wound up. I talked to Lou and Don Spring. We wound up being a sponsor, one of the major sponsors on Hunting Across America, and I thought it was really good. It was, it was getting a lot of exposure. People said, "Man, I saw you on TV down there in Argentina." Mm-hmm. So anyway, at the end of the day, when they announced that the group had bought, that led by Dan Duffy, had bought United Country, and we were at that convention that year, as soon as we all settled down, I found him and said, "We got an open spot for you to go to Argentina with us."
Sure.
So I got to know I got to know Dan during that trip, and that's when on that trip he said, "I want you to look at something." He just handed it to me on the plane. He said, we got 9 hours, just take a read this. And it was his plan to put together the auction services group. Mm-hmm. And he didn't mention any names. He just said, "That's what I'm thinking about doing." And I think Richard Thompson was involved in pushing on that. And
he was.
So anyway, I read all of that. I said, "That's a pretty good plan." I don't know much about auctioning other than I've done a few Calcuttas at a skeet shoot.
Yep.
Anyway, we had a good time. The next year we went, Mike Duffy went with us, so you can imagine how that trip went. I
can only imagine.
We had a great time.
I'm sure.
Mike knows everybody in Argentina when we left there. So, but we had a big time, and United Country's been really good to us, and we do a lot of land and farms and ranches.
Well, and you've been good for United Country.
Well, we've tried to be.
Yeah,
we try to be nice most of the time. So. But it's been a good ride.
Well, it's been a pleasure knowing you, for the last 13 years. I know that first year was kind of interesting, the transition. I can still remember in '06 when Dan came to me. In fact, he came to my auction school to sell me on joining United Country.
Right.
I've been running my own company for 27 years. I had no interest in joining anybody.
Right.
When you ran your own company for that, it's really hard to think about. I said, I'm not going to be a great corporate guy. I said, I don't know how to have a boss. He said, you're not going to have a boss. He said, here's what we have. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to grow. And it's yours to do it. I said, okay. But, it was, I remember going to Las Vegas. They were having a executive meeting in Las Vegas, and it was Lou and Carl and Richard, and I'm not sure if Doug was involved. I don't think he was. He might have been.
He came later.
He was later.
Yeah, he came later.
But it was me and another guy, and just Dan was presenting this idea, and I
can hear it now.
Lou looked at me and said, this is a quote, okay? And he may tell it different, but I know what he said. He said, why in the hell would we want to get in the auction business? And I said, because you'd be damn stupid if you don't.
Yeah, I've heard that story.
And Richard, of course, he was very gung-ho. Well, they'd already done the analysis, and they figured out if they were going to grow United Country, if they were going to change some things to open up some new opportunities. They had like 5 options. And when you graded them, they did a chart. Yep. And when they graded it, auction services was the number one thing that made sense, and it was going to happen at a pretty affordable price point. Yeah. So it wasn't gonna break them.
Yeah, and I think probably a lot of United brokers, agents were kind of worried. What is this about? You're going to compete with us? But it's 2 different things,
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally 2 different things.
And and you can work together on the deal.
Well, and the deal is just like if a lead comes in on a property. I'm not going to go out and show that property. If I get a lead in East Texas, I'm going to call you or Ben or somebody. But I'm not in the showing business. I'm here in Dallas, and I'm in the corporate office. So here we are, and we're going to talk about a project we got coming up. Ben, why don't you tell the folks that are on today, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Macon, Georgia, and I say the better half of my life grew up in Montgomery and Auburn, Alabama.
Mm-hmm. You got a little accent, like you might have been there a few times.
Personally, I think I've lost it.
No, I can tell you have not.
Went to Auburn University, studied forestry and wildlife sciences and business. Knew I wanted to get into land sales after college. Ran a hunting plantation upon graduating, and I graduated, and then 2 days after walking across the stage with a diploma, I moved to Orange Beach, Alabama, and became a deckhand.
Oh, wow.
On a charter fishing boat. My parents were really proud.
Yeah. What's that degree going to do for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Run, Forrest, run.
Exactly. So I was a fisherman for a season, and I was having so much fun doing that. I moved out to Park City, Utah, and became a snowmobile guide. Mm-hmm. So I lived off tips for a year.
That sounds a little bit like a guy named Dan Duffy. We know, he was a guide up in Montana or somewhere up there, Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're an adventure guy. You like to get out. You like to hunt and fish and all that stuff.
Absolutely. And so when I quote settled down, I moved back to Monroeville, Alabama, and ran a hunting plantation. Got it up and running. Opened up a 5-stand. Yeah. Sporting clays. Lost half my hearing then. But then when the economy went down in 2008, that
we remember that very well.
Yeah, you remember that?
Yeah.
That the stock market was funding that hunting plantation, so I got a job in sales with a brick company in Macon, Georgia, and I also was getting my Georgia real estate license. I was going to move to South Georgia and sell plantations, and the salary job took precedence, and I became a brick salesman, and that company moved me to Texas in 2010, and met my wife here in Dallas. I was traveling, selling brick in Louisiana, Texas, and Oklahoma, and we moved to Tyler, had a family, and got my Texas real estate license and became an agent for Carroll Bobo in 2015.
About 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but tell them what you did to get through Auburn University. What were you doing?
I was a wildlife specialist for the USDA. I was a federal beaver trapper. and did animal damage control. So I trapped beavers for the Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody can say that.
No, that's why I wanted to talk about it. Yeah.
That's a good point. I appreciate that, Bobo. That was the best job a college kid with the interest that I have anyway could have, to get paid to, when you got out of class, go check your beaver traps and then go shoot predatory birds at fish ponds.
Sounds like you were on a permanent vacation. Well, they say.
And that's why I didn't go into the real world right after college, because I was used to playing and getting paid to play, so I figured I'd ride that a little bit longer into the Gulf of Mexico.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. Got to Tyler. See, what Ben had told you is I've known his mother-in-law since she was a little bitty girl. And I've known his wife since she was littler than that, when she was a little bitty girl. And so I've known that family forever. If you've ever heard the name Wagstaff as it relates to basketball and sports in Texas,
That's right.
That's his legacy. His wife's grandfather was Floyd Wagstaff.
And so when I got my real estate license, I was talking to my wife's family and found out that Carroll Bobo had sold land for half a century.
Yeah, the way I recall it is actually right after the Lincoln administration.
Right.
He was the man to go to, and kindred spirit, high morals, and good work ethic, and I wanted to shadow him, and picked a great mentor.
Appreciate that.
It's quite a compliment. Yeah.
He's a good man. Ben's a good man, hard worker.
Well, I know that you appreciate him just as much as he appreciates you, because I've heard both of you talk about each other, not in the same room before.
Right. He's a good man.
Well, he's got the wisdom, and I have a lot of energy.
So I want to back up just a hair. What did your parents do when you were
My
growing
mom
up?
retired as a school teacher. She taught kindergarten and first grade for 32 years. And my dad, he was a banker and got out of banking after 30 years and went to work with Auburn University in their business department, working with companies and business development, kind of an incubator that Auburn has on the side. And or it's through Auburn University, through the state. And growing up, loving the outdoors, I realized in college that I wanted to sell land, and
It's where your passion is, the land.
that's where my passion was. So that's why I studied forestry and wildlife, to get knowledge of it before I sold it, and then wanted to run a hunting plantation to get experience.
So you took the right path. You took the right path. So I was down in New Orleans, I guess about a year ago, a little less than a year. And you called me, and you said, we might have something for you to look at. And I did go look at that. That deal didn't pan out.
No.
That's the one over by Lake Palestine.
Yeah, that was something Ben.
And Ben met me down there.
Came up with,
But when we were at convention, I think we were at convention, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, Ben, you had a brochure on a property outside of Farmersville, northeast of here, about an hour, maybe a little more than an hour. And I don't know if you'd just gotten the listing or you'd had it out for 6 months or something, but the activity was not exactly what you were wanting. And it's called Lone Oak Ranch.
That's right.
Lone Oak Ranch is I'm not going to interrupt the flow of you telling about this place, but we're going to show a video here in a couple of minutes. Why don't you tell me about this place and tell me how you came across it? Tell me how you guys did the things that you did with the land, because it was a larger tract.
That's right. So this property started out in the mid-'90s. The CEO of Dr. Pepper wanted a ranch close to town, close to Dallas. So he bought this and had some more acreage that he shared with a partner. And I represented a buyer. Last August, they closed on this property. It was 1,200 acres, and it was for sale for 2 years. And we made site visits multiple times in 3 different years, calendar years anyway. And there's a lot of due diligence buying a property of this magnitude with this price point. And
this close to Dallas.
This close to Dallas, the infrastructure that's on it, the improvements that are on it, and just the raw land that goes with it. Some people wanted just the improvements, some people wanted just the land, but nobody.
You had some floodplain in there.
It's a majority of it is in floodplain, so there's some parts of it that are you cannot develop. So there's pros and cons to both sides of whatever side of the table you're looking at, and so that was hard to navigate that for a year, over 2 years to buy it, and then once it was bought, this group decided to sell the improvements and use the land to create a green belt that will provide just undeveloped land in perpetuity right outside of Dallas. And in 2018, there was a bond passed, $750 million bond, that's going to put in a loop around McKinney.
And they need it.
Yeah, they do.
They already need it.
So that outer loop is going to go right on the outside of this property. So this property is, positioned in a great location for investment opportunity. Right now, it has it's been a recreational value in cattle production, but in a couple of years, when that loop is there, it might not be sold by the acre; it might be sold by the square foot.
Sure.
And there's plenty of road frontage. The fact that there's adjacent property on the north boundary and the east boundary that will be in a greenbelt in perpetuity,
you're always
there's value to that.
You're always
there's a lot of value.
You're always going to have a great view.
There's never going to be a skyscraper right next to you.
And the other thing that I love about the property is it's at that high point where I don't care where you are.
It's one of the higher points in the area.
You turn around, you look to the south, you've got something you can see. You're not looking at a hill.
Right.
You're looking at water. You look to the east and to the northeast. You've got the green belt.
Yes, sir.
It's a really neat little property, and it's all fenced off. And tell them about the improvements.
So it's got a 5 surface acres of water pond that was that's fully stocked. It's got an indoor riding arena. It's got 9 stalled horse barn that's connected. And it's got an outdoor riding arena. The main house is it's 3-bedroom. It's pushing 5,000 square feet, and there's a guest house that was designed to be a ranch manager / guest house. So it has a wall dividing it, but you can open up with a door. You can share a big den. There's 2 kitchens in that guest house with 4 bedrooms. There's a building that has a 10,000 gallon water tank that has 3 bladders in it. So the water from it's community water. It does have a water well, but the house uses the water bladders and for more water pressure.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a diesel generator for backup energy. There's a wine storage downstairs in the main building. Magnificent fireplace with just a broad view.
Just reminds you of a lodge.
It's a lodge style,
and
log home.
It's a 3-level.
It's 3-level log cabin. The timbers were brought in from Utah. The hardwood, the pine floors are made from a cotton mill outside of Waco.
That's cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of heritage and history with this building, and the view of the property as well.
And you have a 3-car unit.
Yes, sir. It's 3 cars with a 4th bay for UTV.
Mm-hmm. Pipe and cable.
Yes, sir.
All the way around her.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you got a neat drive too. The other thing is you're not driving on a bunch of gravel. You're not.
Yeah.
You've got nice asphalt surface coming in, and then as you drive onto the property, you've got a security gate there.
Right.
And then you've got the drive. And so if you happen to own a Mercedes or a Corvette,
it will not bump.
You're not going to have a problem.
That's right.
To get to your door.
All weather access.
And it also has quite a nice area where you can pull in front.
There's a pool cabana.
Yep.
With a waterfall and don't want to call it a lazy river, but a river that trickles down from the main house down to the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Has a hot tub.
Got a neat pool house.
Yeah, neat feature.
Yeah, it looks like a resort.
Yeah, it does.
It's a mini resort is what it is. And from my perspective, I look at it just like the guy with Dr. Pepper.
Right.
It would be it's a great place for an executive or executive family to go and get away on the weekends. It could be your horse facility if somebody's in the equine business and they travel and
right.
There's plenty of room to park trailers and do the things you want to do, but it's upscale. It looks the part.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more acreage. Obviously, the green belt that's next to it, that's available for leasing as well. So you don't have to buy the 12,000 or 1,200 acres. You buy the 115 acres and have access to over 1,000 acres to do your horseback riding, to do cattle ranching, hunting.
That's a huge thing, you know, because you're not laying out all the cash to buy it.
Right. The largest deer, low fence, largest deer killed in Texas last year was 233 inches, was killed less than 2 miles from this property.
Yep.
Just over a mile and a half away. As you know, Collin County is archery only. Deer hunting, so the deer can get of age and get mature and get to be world-class hunting.
Well, the neat thing is you can leave Dallas, you can get on 75, go straight up to 380, cut across to Farmersville and go north, or you can go up to Buc-ee's, stop at Buc-ee's. A lot of people like to do that. That's what I did when I went up and looked at it the first time. So that's my natural stop. If there's a Buc-ee's, I'm going to go to the Buc-ee's.
Absolutely.
And
even if you have to detour.
Well, I did a little, not much though. You know, it's a pretty easy run,
right?
Because you're going to run right into it from the east, go east, and but I'm telling you, in the timbers that are in this main home, when you look at the rafters and you look at the quality of the construction, it's well, I'd hate to have to try to replace it.
They cut no corners.
No, I don't know what it would cost to replace that building, but it would be a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And we're really big on expensive in Dallas. But we've talked to a lot of folks about it. Trailvis, you about ready to show this video?
Yep, we have it queued up.
Okay, I'm ready when you are. I'm ready to go right now. It's Monday and I'm ready to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me the website again. What did it say?
It's buyloneoakranch.com.
Okay. So we'd appeal to anybody that's interested in that property to get a hold of us, and we'll connect you with Ben, and he'll be happy to show that property.
Absolutely.
And if he can't do it, I'll certainly be happy to drive out there and do it. But Ben's the man when it comes to this property. This has been his baby. He knows all about it.
Yep.
He knows how to show it better than anybody else, and it's by appointment only. And but we certainly we have a bid process going on right now.
Correct.
What's the closeout date on that, Ben?
To January 28th.
January the 28th. So if you're interested in this property, get a hold of us today if possible, because we're already, creeping up on the 2-week mark right now.
Yep.
And we've been showing the property. And we will also, a lot of people don't realize when we have a bid process like this, a seal bid, we will be happy to entertain preemptive offers. So if somebody would like to make a preemptive offer and beat the process, we're certainly willing to do that. Our goal is to get the property sold for our sellers, and they are motivated to move that property. And it's a gorgeous property. If you're looking for a ranch property in North Texas, this is a great candidate for you.
A beautiful place.
It
Absolutely.
Is. Investment opportunity.
It really is. And this whole loop thing around McKinney, I mean, it's coming. It's coming because we don't have any options. We have to be able to. We just keep building loops around everything.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it started out with the LBJ freeway, and now we got the George Bush tollway around the next loop, and we're just waiting for the next. So you got 380 out there.
And this is that out of that $750 million for infrastructure, $600 million is going specifically to this Loop 9.
There you go. Yep.
So it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah.
Well, you know, in your lifetime, for sure, it's going to be houses all the way to the river and into Oklahoma. That's just the way it's going to be. And if you look at, you know, the stretch, even the stretch off Preston Road right now, 289.
Yeah.
If you drive, you know, I remember driving that when I was a kid. I went to North Texas State University, which is University of North Texas now. We used to take the back roads to get to Richardson, and there's no taking back roads. There's no back roads left.
It's not even, I mean, you don't have to go backdated that long. I moved to Dallas in 2010, and I used to duck hunt public waters where there's, you know, neighborhoods all the way around it now.
Lake Lavon and all that, yeah. You missed a loop. Loop 12 was the first one.
Well,
which is now Northwest Highway. Which is,
you know, it's interesting. Back in the 60s, I remember being in Fort Worth when they were building around Fort Worth, that Loop 820.
Yeah.
And I can still remember being on that stretch of road on the north end of town, and we were listening to the radio, and it came on that Bobby Kennedy had been killed out in California. That would have been around 69, I guess. Right. Well, actually, was it 69?
his brother in 63. Yeah.
I think that's right.
64.
Yeah, it was around 69. But anyway, we don't need history lessons.
Yeah, I just remember that. I remember the event.
But I remember it was out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, just in the middle of nowhere. And right now, this place just has a great feel about it because the views are fantastic. You've got that green belt. And I can't accentuate enough how important that green belt is going to be if you buy that property and you want some recreational land or some running land.
And that means there's limited inventory around you, so that can only increase your price, supply and demand.
Yep.
And the view off the back of that property where you're coming out that back patio and all that, I mean, it's just that lake and all.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It's unbelievable.
So tell them, give us a description again. How many acres are we talking about?
It's 115 acres with the improvements. There's county road frontage on 4 different roads.
So are we offering the whole 115 acres, or are we doing the improvements in
87 acres or 90 acres approximately?
Yeah. That's
I think
that's the main piece that we're offering, and then if they're interested in buying the other 25 acres or something.
25, 28 acres, then it could be up to 115 acres.
There you go. There you go. Well, it's a neat piece of property. What do we have the 800 number? Do you remember what that is? We'll find it here in just a second. It was on that video, but I wasn't looking at it. And this is
got his number.
Oh, you know what? I got it right here, guys. Sorry about that.
I've got.
Yeah, here we go.
I got our number.
800-485-8214. It's 800-485-8214, and you call that number. You're going to get one of us in our office here in this building at Lincoln Center, and then we'll make the initial contact and then connect you to Ben and Carroll's office, and we'll let him take it from there. But I'm telling you, it's a gorgeous piece of property in Collin County and with income potential. If you'd like a brochure, call us. We can send it to you digitally, or we can send it to you through the U.S. mail. And so, Ben, you got anything else you want to say about this property?
Thank you for having us. This property is one of a kind, and like I said, with the rate that Collin County is growing, McKinney was 6th fastest growing city in the country last year, with Plano being 4. It's one of the fastest growing counties in the country. The path of progress is coming this way, and it's a great opportunity to get in front of it.
Well, the nice thing about it is we do have the road infrastructure in. There is a little bit of building work being finalized right now just east of McKinney, but it's a whole lot better than when 380 was 2 lanes. And so now you've got multiple lanes on both sides. That area right in there is in a growth mode, but this is far enough out. You still have some peace and quiet, and it's kind of on a neat little run there where it's very private, and there's really nothing. You might have some neighbors, but they're not right on top of you, so you don't have to deal with that.
That's right.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, folks, and Carol, thank you for coming.
Hey, thank you for having us, Mike. Appreciate it. We've been trying to do this for a while.
Yeah.
Glad to get over
We've been trying to do this for a while. Ben, thank you for everything you're doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having us.
We want to get this thing done. So, on behalf of everyone that's a part of this one, we appreciate you so much. Thank you, Trelvis, for producing today's show. And as we go into the new year, we say Happy New Year to you one more time. Have a great week, and come back and see us next Monday. We'll have another show for you. On behalf of everybody that's a part of this one, Carroll, Bobo, and Ben Jackson, God bless, and we'll see you next time from Dallas, Texas at Lincoln Center.